A machine that weighed 14 tons arrived in Steele County, Minnesota in the summer of 1878. The men who heard it coming made a decision before they ever saw it. Most of them decided it wasn't for them. The machine cost $900. A hired threshing crew cost 12 cents a bushel. At 40 bushels an acre, on a 100-acre wheat farm, you do that arithmetic. There was one farmer on that road who didn't turn away. His name was Eli Voss. He was 34 years old. He had been farming the same 112 acres outside Owatonna for 9 years, and what he saw in that machine, in the steam and the flywheel and the iron teeth, was not a gamble. It was a calculation. In 1878, the average Minnesota wheat farmer threshed by hand flail or horse-powered separator. 2 acres a day, on a good day. 8 to 10 days was the harvest window before the grain began to shatter in the head and blow away in the September wind. 112 acres, 2 acres a day, 10 days before the window closes. Do that arithmetic. By 1878, Minnesota had become the second largest wheat-producing state in the nation, but the harvest hadn't caught up with the planting. Between 1870 and 1880, cultivated acreage in Steele County more than doubled. The farms got bigger. The crews stayed the same size. The old way was not wrong. It had fed families for 30 years. A good horse-powered separator could thresh 40 bushels an hour with enough men working the feed. The problem was the men. You needed 8 to 12 of them, and in September of 1878, every man in the county needed to be on his own land. The math was not unkind. It was just honest. The prairie had always looked endless, till someone started counting the days left in it. Eli Voss had been counting for years. He kept a journal. Just numbers. Mostly. Bushels per acre. Days lost to weather. Crew wages. He did not write feelings in it. He wrote what things cost. And in September of 1876, something changed. He hired a 6-man crew at noon. Lost 2 of them to a neighbor's emergency by 3 o'clock. Finished 22 acres in 10 days. Left 31 unharvested. He wrote 1 line below the total. This cannot happen again. He kept that journal every season. For 2 years before the machine arrived, he had already been building the case. The man who said it plainest was a farmer named August Caldwell. August Caldwell had 400 acres outside Medford, 6 miles west of Owatonna. He had farmed in Steele County since 1864. He had seen machines come and go. A man who spends $900 on a steam engine is a man who is afraid of real work. You want to know what that machine needs? Coal, water, an engineer who costs $3 a day, a boiler that explodes if your fireman is drunk by noon. My grandfather threshed with a flail. My father threshed with horses. I thresh with 8 good men who show up when I call them. That is a system. A steam engine is a prayer. When the machine arrived on Eli's farm in June of 1878, the men from the road watched it being unloaded. They did not come to help. One of them, Harlan Druce, called across the fence, "You know what you just bought, Voss?" Eli was unwrapping chain from the frame. He didn't look up. "I know what I just bought." The mockery had 2 stages. The first was social. Afraid of real work was a phrase that stuck. The second stage was commercial. 3 of the men who had threshed for Eli did not come back in 1878. They went to Caldwell's farm instead. Eli Voss lost his crew before the season started. He did not argue. He did not explain. He hired an engineer named Carl Fent from St. Paul for the season, paid him $3 a day, and started figuring the new arithmetic. His wife, Clara, stood at the edge of the field the first morning they fired the boiler. "Is this the right thing?" she asked. He looked at the machine, then at the field. "I've been wrong about the weather before. I haven't been wrong about the numbers." The neighbor who watched from across the fence, Peter Holm, 26 acres, first full season, walked up to the wire late in the afternoon. "How much did the engineer cost you?" Eli told him. "Is he any good?" "Come see for yourself in a week." Here is what August Caldwell saw when he looked at the steam thresher, a $900 machine that needed coal, water, a trained engineer, and the constant threat of a boiler failure. He wasn't wrong about any of it. He was just looking at the wrong numbers. Layer 1, the obvious advantage. A steam thresher in 1878 could thresh 300 to 500 bushels per day. A horse-powered separator, 150. 9 days, with 1 day left over. Layer 2, the hidden cost everyone missed. The engineer and coal, $22 for the season. An 8-man crew at 12 cents a bushel on 4,000 bushels, $480. But that number assumed you could get the crew. Labor shortages in southern Minnesota during harvest were documented by the state agricultural commissioner in his 1879 report. 2 days at 500 bushels a day, 1,000 bushels lost to shattering. At 65 cents a bushel in 1878, that was $650 on a single bad September. The machine paid for itself before the first frost. Clara found him sitting there one evening about a month before harvest. "You've checked those figures 3 times today." "I know. Are they wrong?" "No." "Then why?" "Because I need them to be right for a different reason than being right." She set a plate in front of him and went to bed. He checked the wire at the south post, the one that always needed tightening. Then he went inside. Layer 3, the part nobody else bothered to figure out, and it is the part that mattered most. Under Minnesota property law in the 1870s, a farmer could use documented capital improvements as evidence of farm productivity when applying for additional land credit. A $900 steam thresher, properly listed as fixed capital equipment, could secure a credit line that no amount of hired labor could. His father had farmed in Ohio. He had lost a quarter section in 1861 because he couldn't document productive capacity when a creditor called in a note. Eli Voss had read that story in a letter his father wrote and kept in the back of the ledger. He didn't know the legal term for what he was doing, but he knew what he was protecting. September 4th, 1881. The weather came early. A wet front moved through southern Minnesota, 6 days of rain and wind that followed a week of drought. The grain was ripe. The window was open, and then it wasn't. August Caldwell sent for his 8-man crew on September 3rd. 4 of them were already committed to a larger operation in Waseca County. He had 2 men and a horse separator. He lost 8 working days and 2 weeks. By the time his full crew arrived, 20% of his wheat had shattered and blown across his neighbor's fence. Eli Voss ran the steam thresher 10 hours a day for 11 days straight. Carl Fent knew how to keep the boiler running in damp conditions. Eli had asked about that specifically when he hired him in the spring. He brought in 4,400 bushels, lost less than 3% to weather damage. Same September, same rain, same soil, different understanding. For some farmers that season, this meant a tight year. For others, it meant selling land just to survive. By 1882, 41 farms in Steele County had fallen behind on land notes. 17 went to auction within 2 years. The last fully hand-threshed operation in Eli Voss's section of the county closed in the spring of 1884. August Caldwell walked to the fence line in late October of 1881. Eli saw him coming from 100 yards. He waited. Caldwell stopped at the wire, looked at Eli's cleared field, looked back at his own. "Tell me what you were looking at," he said. "3 years ago, when you decided." "I wasn't looking at the machine," Eli said. "I was looking at September, every September I'd ever had, and what it had cost me every time I didn't have enough iron in that field." Caldwell nodded. "Next year," he said, "I need a better plan." He didn't feel victory, just confirmation, and he opened the gate. The steam thresher was not the right machine for every farm in Steele County. On smaller plots, 40 or 50 acres, the capital cost didn't close. For farmers with reliable crews, the horse separator made sense. The machine wasn't wrong for them. It was wrong for different ground. August Caldwell was right about what a steam engine needed to run. He was just right about different ground than Eli Voss was standing on. The same flywheel. What changed was not the machine. What changed was the world's willingness to accept what it had always been saying. By 1890, steam threshers operated on more than 60% of large Minnesota wheat farms. By 1900, hand flail threshing had effectively ended. It happened one farmer at a time, each one sitting with a ledger, checking a fence post at the south end of his claim. After that, American farming was never the same. This story draws from documented history. Steam threshers capable of 300 to 500 bushels per day arrived in southern Minnesota between 1876 and 1882. The 1881 harvest disruptions and labor shortages are documented in State Agricultural Commissioner reports. The 10-day harvest window is documented by the University of Minnesota Agricultural Experiment Station. Eli Voss, August Caldwell, and Peter Holm are fictional characters placed inside this real historical record. The flywheel is real, the ledger is real, the September window is always real. Most people see the headline and decide before the season comes. A few read the whole ledger. Count the September days. Ask not what the machine can do, but what September has already been trying to tell them for 3 years running. History remembers the loud men. But America was often built by the ones who were too busy checking the south fence post to say anything about it. If that second kind of person is who you are, you already know why you're here. The future rarely arrives all at once. Usually, it starts with one farmer firing a boiler before sunrise while the rest of the county is still deciding. This is American soil.